I'm doing the pre-work for the Artist's Way before the 12-week program. So today is the first day, and included in the program, it's morning pages and a weekly artist date. And the morning pages are daily, and that's three handwritten um, journal pages. I did this a while back. I think 2023. I was going through a really bad breakup. Actually, um, I did it like right after we broke up. It was a really bad breakup on Thanksgiving, and um, it was actually a time period where I would break up with people every holiday, which was unfortunate, but they weren't right for me. So I guess maybe it was fortunate and festive, in my opinion, now looking back. Um, yeah, so the introduction is something that I absolutely love. And something that the Artist Way book taught me the first time around was that it doesn't have to be perfect. And I have been hosting a book club for the Artist Way, and we're going to do another cycle of it coming up soon. You can go to the link in my bio to join Heartfelt Creatives community. Um, it's free. And the book club is something that made me think about the first time I did it, where I, for the first time, said I didn't have to do everything perfectly. If I didn't write the morning pages in the morning, I could do it later in the day. And this is actually going to be the fourth time I've done the Artist Way. And other times it was with other people. And that first time when it was with myself, I actually tried it a year before that and I couldn't finish it because it was overwhelming because I wanted everything to be perfect. And I said, if I can't do this perfectly, I can't do it at all. And I realized just how false that was. And that's not a way to live life, because if you're always trying to be perfect and you're only going to do things if it's perfect, then there are a lot of things you're going to give up on. And as someone who once thought that it was a good decision to give up on myself, I just want to remind everyone that holding on when something is worthwhile, whether that be your life or a program or investing in yourself, that's what really matters. And I think it's in those moments where we choose a better way that allow for us to reach other people and to allow for them to do the same. And I talk a lot about invisible impact, and I don't think impact should be invisible, but I think it's just inherent that some of it is. And I love the idea that sometimes we do find out how we impact people. And I think that's so beautiful. And when I first talked about this phrase, invisible impact, it was when I was doing a lot of suicide prevention posts on X, it was Twitter at the time. And I would repost all of them to Facebook and Instagram. And I never really got any likes or comments on Facebook and Instagram. And I remember thinking to myself, because I was um, growing a platform and kind of thriving on X, well, Twitter at the time. And I said, is it worth it to post on the other platforms? Should I just focus on the one that's working? And within a span of a couple months, I went to in person events with family and friends, and multiple people came up to me and said that what I was posting impacted them and that it made a difference for them. And that was something that I never would have expected, because each person had never messaged me. They had never liked any single one of my posts. They had never left a comment. I never would have known they saw it. And when you put something out into the world, you don't know who it will reach. And I think that a lot of people are afraid of putting something out there and being judged, but also of being abused in a way that someone will comment all of their worst fears and tell them that it's all true, every negative thought they have about themselves or what they're capable of. And I think when you grow, you do get more of that. And even when I had really small audiences, I still got a lot of negativity, and I've experienced harassment online too. And I just think for anyone who's an artist who thinks that privacy is in some way protecting them from all these things, I would ask at what cost? And for anyone who is an artist because they believe that their work can impact people, I think that's a cost that you have to truly examine. Because if you can help someone, why wouldn't you? Um, if you can inspire someone to keep going, if you could inspire someone to love their life a little bit more, or put their heart on a page just like you if you're a writer, put their heart on canvas if you're a painter, or if you sketch, whatever your art form is, I think the most beautiful art form is how we choose to walk around this life and how we choose to live, um, in our words and our deeds. And I think the more coherence there is there, the more impact we have, which is interesting because I think it's important to talk about duality and polarity. And sometimes that recognizing that there exists a duality in all things, that there's good and bad in the same ideas and the same people, in contradiction, that somehow doesn't mean it can't exist. And that we are strong enough as individuals to hold ideas that contradict each other in our hearts and have gray areas. Um, so yeah, I this started off me talking about the idea of not having to be perfect, and that's an example of me not scripting this and not having this be perfect. So I don't know who needed to hear that, but I'm sure there's someone, or there will be someone eventually, or somehow it'll help me articulate myself in a way that one day is exactly what someone needs to hear, even if they never listen to this or watch it. Something that I like in the basic principles is number 5. Creativity is God's gift to us. Using our creativity is our gift back to God. That was when I highlighted and folded the page over. I know it's controversial, but I personally fold pages over, um, which I think helps me go back and reread. But I know it's controversial, so I'm sorry for anyone that I've offended. Um, but yeah, I thought I'd read some of the quotes. Words are a form of action capable of influencing change. Um, I have been a part of a lot of communities where change was the objective, self improvement, developing yourself, even becoming a better person. And I have seen myself change drastically in intentional ways. And sometimes there are people who aren't supportive, even if you're in a community which is stated objective is exactly what you're doing. And I was teased a lot in one of these communities I was a part of, that led to a whole bunch of other communities. And I felt like I had to shrink to stay. And eventually I just had to distance myself to just enough that I felt like I can push myself further, and that there wasn't constant opposition. Um, I think sometimes teasing could be lighthearted and in some way a sense of humor, but I think when it's directed toward someone's effort, that it's not well received. Because I think if you are making a sincere effort to do anything, you are overcoming every fear that you have. You are going against all the conditioning that tells you you're not enough. And to overcome that conditioning and then have people throw those words back into your face, um, doesn't feel good. It feels isolating, and it did put me in a hard place when I was going through that. Um, and I could never understand why that I didn't feel supported, um, and that I felt like I was supportive of other people. And in my heart, I think I would have wished for, encouragement. I got into a lot of Alex Hormozy because I think he's one of the only people in the self-development community, or I guess more business community, who is talking about relationships in the way that sometimes people aren't happy for you. And I don't mean that in the way that I think people would like say, I'm not happy for you. I mean that in the way that people aren't happy for their own reasons and they can't channel the feeling of happiness in a way that allows for them to communicate happiness. And yeah, a lot of people have bad habits, in how they communicate with people, and to be on the receiving end of what feels like someone's bad habit is never a good feeling. Um, but I'm saying all of this to remind you that fears aren't delusional. And I think that's really hard for us to hear, is that I'm not saying that I've done all of this and everything I was worried about didn't matter. I mean, it didn't, but also it came to fruition. Like a lot of people were super negative, and a lot of people didn't support me, and all the things I fear about myself, people have verbalized to my face, or whether that be through a screen. And I think this is something that if there's one message I hope you leave this video with today, it's specifically this. And it's comes from this time when I was doing a space on X. Again, it was Twitter space at the time. And I was talking about my mental health and my journey and advocacy with suicide prevention. And at the end of it, I had mentioned being on medication for it, and someone comes up and just goes off about medication and how, um, it's not good for you and it's all big pharma, and it was just very negative. They had to ask this person to leave. And as they were speaking, I remember thinking to myself, I volunteered to do this because someone asked, and I just wanted to oblige. And I don't have to stay. I just said, I don't have to be here. I can leave. I can leave this person. Like, I don't have to listen to this person go off for the next 10 minutes about this. And they did. Um, and I thought to myself, if I do that, someone in the audience might be in the exact same position that I'm in, but they don't have a platform to use their voice right now. And I thought about that person, and I heard this person dribbling out negativity and it being directed toward me. And my heart was with that person that felt the same way I did. And I just didn't leave. I waited until they kicked this person out. And then I said about I wanted to leave. And the reason I stayed was because if there's someone in the audience that feels as bad as I do, listening to people pointing fingers at a larger issue than one individual can hold inside of themselves, um, that person matters more to me than my own comfort in or discomfort at the time in staying there. And that's what I said. And I really feel that. And I always, when I'm in that situation where it could be, I could either put myself out there in the world or I can hide under the covers, which I think I do either way. But there's a difference between hiding under the covers after you put yourself out there and just always being under the covers hiding. Um, and I think when we decide that, we have to sit with that person that is impacted. And we have to believe that that message will reach that person and that they matter more than our discomfort in the realization of all our fears being articulated back to us. And a lot of people don't talk about this, sometimes even danger, or feeling unsafe. And we all have to decide that for ourselves. Again, some people create art for only themselves. And I wouldn't consider that a career because I think your career has to be a purposeful service to the world. And if you never share your art, it's putting good into the world, but also not sitting with the person that you can impact. And again, like I started saying at the beginning of this video, sometimes what we do in private, it allows for us to publicly support people and, be the voice that someone needs to hear exactly when they need to hear it, because we have been going off about the same thing for the last 6 months. And it just so happens that this is the first time someone heard us, and it was the person who needed to hear it. And, there's a great argument that can be said, that perhaps it's in the repeating of the same messages over and over again that actually allow for us to get to a point where we can impact people. And maybe ideas in themselves aren't so powerful that somehow they transcend the delivery. Maybe it's really in believing in something with your whole heart and pouring it out into the world repeatedly and generously that it becomes a part of someone's blood in a way. Another quote: "You need to claim the events of your life to make yourself yours." And this is something that I believe wholeheartedly. This idea of making your life feel like yours. And I think for anyone who's experienced trauma, if I could sum up all trauma in one word, it's that your life doesn't feel like yours anymore. You feel like you're in someone else's life, or that your agency is taken away from you, and that it's because the world belongs to those people and not you. and your world is no longer yours. So something I was doing at the end of December, and I think I'm going to start doing again, was this little series, and it was like making my life feel like mine again. Um, and I think there's a lot to be said about that. When you create art, I think that's a beautiful way to make your life feel like yours again. And I think that sometimes in our art, people can find themselves and people can go to that place where they feel like they're hiding under the covers with art that makes their heart feel open to the world. And I think we all have a role in that. And I think that it's never been more important to decide to be someone who puts themselves out there. And I think there's a lot to be said about creating art for your own sake, but I think that there's something that is so deeply ingrained in some artists that they're connected to the people that they're meant to impact. And I just think that in a way, that's a relationship. And we can have a relationship with our art. My goal for this week in writing is to have a relationship with my manuscripts and develop that relationship. I think a lot of the times, if I ignore someone, I wouldn't expect a relationship to be positive. And I think for any writer out there, they know that feeling of feeling like you're ignoring your manuscripts. And when you this is something a different realization. I was working with a relationship coach, and I was so afraid to get relationship coaching because I thought of every problem I have in relationships, and everything came up and it felt so overwhelming. And I actually started going to them for creative stuff. I'm thinking of all the things that I was looking to get advice on, and then all the obstacles at the same time that I was experiencing. And they kind of all collided and it all seemed manageable. And then underneath it, it felt like maybe this block that I was having was actually a closing of my heart. And that when I closed my heart to relationships after this last breakup I was in, and a case can be made for longer than that before that, maybe it might, my heart wasn't open in the last relationship I was in a strange way. And opening my heart to the idea of, well, maybe a relationship isn't something that is more than I can handle. And maybe, relationships are something that I can learn to be better at and learn to raise my standards and learn to be a better partner, but also learn how to choose better partners. Um, Yeah, and I just noticed that. I noticed that when my heart started opening to this idea of maybe there's someone out there for me. I don't know. I don't know if there is, but maybe there could be. And just opening up to that and feeling like I'm walking around with like a different perspective, and my heart opened in a way that it wasn't before. And a side of me not being shut down. And I think the wrong relationship can do that to you. Breakups can do that to you. I would say a lot of the times, if a relationship does that to you, it usually leads to a breakup, as it should. And yeah, I was able to get back to writing. in a way that there were a lot of scenes that I had thought about and was so emotional over that I was able to finally write. And because I was finally able to write them, I realized that the creative block was a love block, and something that something that I'm still kind of struggling with is I'm not sure if I've ever really had a healthy love experience, or have ever really fallen in love in a way that was substantial, um, or significant. And I think to myself, because I'm writing some romance, not as the genre, but kind of as subplots. And I think to myself, if I've never really been in love, and I think it takes two people to be in love, I think I have fallen in love with people, but I don't think it's been reciprocated in any significant way. And if I've never been in love, then how can I write people falling in love? And, I'm taking it one step at a time. And that just feels like enough. It feels like I don't have to be perfect to show up to my manuscripts. I don't have to be perfect every day to finish the 12 weeks. And neither do you. And if there's anything that you get from the last part of this video, I hope it's just that you don't have to fit this perfect mold of perfection, and you don't have to wish yourself into being someone you're not, or wish away everything that you feel like is holding you back. Sometimes you just need to show up. And today actually happens to be Valentine's Day, and it's always been a hard day for me. And I thought that it was the perfect day to be day one of the Artist Way. And yeah, I'm going to be working on the pre-work for a week, easing back into it, and posting as much as I can about this, and inviting as many people as I possibly can find, to come to the book club in my heartfelt creatives community. I put combined heartfelt and artists and artists, kind of cute. Um, Thank you. If you watched this, please leave a comment because I don't I would be really impressed if anyone watched the whole thing. So thank you for the support, and you're enough as you are.